Hi, everyone. I am just going to go over a few of the trickier problems that were mentioned in this week's discussion. I'll probably just do a couple of quick videos and just go through one problem at a time, so that way you can follow along. I'm not going to do a PowerPoint. I'm just going to show you straight from the workbook. So let's get started. One that was mentioned was number 32 in chapter 11. That's on page 54. So it says here, a patient who was on observation status for 48 hours is discharged from the hospital. The patient was being observed for an automobile accident for subdural hematoma, subsequently ruled out. Code only the discharge services and diagnosis. Okay, so when you first look at this, you're likely going to be drawn to this observation status for your CPT, right? And that's a good place to start. But do keep in mind that it says code only the discharge services. So we are not going to do the regular observation code here. It's just going to be the discharge from observation. And so we don't need to know anything about the history or exam or MDM, because obviously that's not even been mentioned. So we're just looking for a discharged code there in the CPT. And it's pretty helpful here. It shows you there's just one code. So we're only going to need one code for discharge from observation. Now for the diagnosis, here's where they're kind of trying to trick you, but it's a good reminder and something you should definitely make a note of. It says that they're being observed after an automobile accident for subdural hematoma. So you might come in and think subdural hematoma is the diagnosis. However, it does say it was ruled out. And we don't ever code for something that is ruled out or for something that is they're trying to rule out. Okay, we have to have a confirmed diagnosis in order to use that. So what do we put as the ICD-10 code in this kind of situation? Well, luckily, that's what our Z codes are for, right? Those are for those situations that we need context, we need an explanation, but we don't necessarily have a diagnosis that 100% fits in with what is going on with the patient, right? So what we're going to look for is an observation following an automobile accident. Now, anytime you have an accident or a kind of traumatic external situation, that's going to key you into the fact that an external cause code would likely be appropriate. Now, remember, you might not always have to do an external cause code. It's really going to depend on the facility you are working for and what their requirements are, and how interested they are in tracking certain things. Or being compliant with those government programs that track things. However, here we know there's two codes required, but we do not have two diagnoses for sure. So the second one is going to be an external cause code. And that is going to be since all we know about this patient is that they were in an automobile accident, it's going to be the external cause is an automobile accident. So what I would start with, let's go ahead and start with the CPT, and then we can go look at the diagnosis codes. And you can do it whichever way makes sense for you. A lot of people like to start with the diagnosis codes, but since we've just been working on E&M, I want to go straight there first. Okay, so in the E&M section, we talked about this in the last video. If you do not know where you are going, you can definitely come through here and look it up in the table of contents, okay? And we would be looking for observation care and discharge. And so we could definitely look through here. And it looks like on page 2, there's hospital observation services. So that's definitely the place that we can start, okay? And then down here, we do see discharge services as well. So we could definitely look in here. But this one you'll see is for inpatient services. So we're probably not going to look at hospital discharge, but we're probably going to see if there's an appropriate code in this section first. Now you can just flip through and see if you're comfortable using the E&M section and you kind of know how it's laid out, which is very logical in my opinion. You know, it starts with outpatient, it goes to observation, then it moves into inpatient, and then long-term care facilities and additional services like home care. But, you know, if you are not as comfortable with the layout, then you can definitely start with the table of contents for sure. Okay, and once you, and here's hospital observation services, which we know from the documentation that that's what we're looking for is hospital observation services. And that's what all of these codes are over here. And that's where we're going to get into those key components and all of that. However, we don't have any of those key components. We don't know any of that information right now. And so what I'd look for is, remember, it goes subsequent and initial is the first, so initial and subsequent, but we see right here, there is discharge services. So usually before the section, they will have a section on discharge services, but occasionally it might be after, so you might have to flip through a little bit. Again, that's where your table of contents is going to be really important, but the main thing you want to find is the right section that you're looking for. Right? So we were looking for observation services. It wasn't inpatient technically because he was just being observed. It was not fully admitted, but then he was discharged. So the code here, luckily there's only one code, which is excellent, right? That makes everything so much easier if you only have the one code to deal with. And that is 99217. So that is what we're going to use. 99217, and that is observation care discharge. And you can read through the explanation if you'd like. But the good thing about this particular example is there's only one code to use if people are discharged from observation. So that is a very quick CPT code to find. Okay, so next we're going to look at the ICD-10 codes, which is going to give us a little bit more practice with those Z codes and external cause index, which I'm sure is everybody's favorite, right? Okay, I'm going to switch to my other book or other favorite manual. And so the first thing we're going to look at, now remember, we're not going to do that rule out code of that subdural hematoma. We are going to be looking for an observation because that's all we know. All we know about this patient is that he was observed and they ruled out the diagnosis. So the keyword or the main term here is going to be observation. Okay, so go to your alpha index. And you will flip to O. Okay, and it's on page 363. Down here at the bottom, observation, and in parentheses, it says following for without need for medical care. So that follows really well with what we're looking for. We know it's following. Okay, so it's going to be observation following an accident. Okay, and luckily that's the very first one here. But this is not elsewhere classified. We know it was a transportation accident, a car accident, and they do have a code for that. So let's start here. Z04.1, and let's go see if there's any other more specific code or guidelines that we need. Flip to Z. Okay, and it is on page 1558. And here's Z04, and that is encounter for examination and observation for other reasons. And it says this category is to be used when a person without a diagnosis is suspecting of having an abnormal condition without signs or symptoms, which requires study, but after examination and observation is ruled out. This category is also used for administrative and legal observation status. Okay, so this is a perfect, I'm sorry, that's right up here at the top. This is a perfect fit for that scenario, right? We know that he was observed for a condition and then he didn't have it. He was ruled out, it was ruled out. But you can see here, we do have that red dot. And so we were directed to Z04.1, encounter for examination and observation following a transport accident. That's going to exclude work accident, but we don't have any information saying that it was a work situation. So Z04.1, there's no other codes or more specific guidelines here, and no other symbols that would say we can't use that. And so that looks like a good fit for us. So we're going to do Z04.1. And then because we know that there's another code that they want, and we don't have that much information except that there was this external event, this accident, that is going to direct us to the external cause index. And we're going to see if we can find a car accident code. So flip up to the front. And I know this is not a section we've used extensively, and that's kind of the point. They're trying to get you to use it again. Okay, so we're going to be in the A section, and remember, external cause index has its own index to look in. So you're not going to go to the alpha for this situation, but we are going to look for transportation. And even if you started here to car, it's going to direct you to C, accident, transport, car occupant. So if you've gone to car accident, like that would make sense to me to do that. That seems like a very reasonable first step. It's still going to direct you to transport, car occupant. So that's what we know to do. And this is probably like one of the most common external cause codes you're going to use. So this is really good practice and something you might want to make a note of somewhere. Okay, so we're going to go to accident, transport. So we are traffic accident, transport. Okay. So transport starts on page 603. And we are looking for car occupant. And let's see here. Bus occupant is over here, so that's close, but no cigar, right? Oh, okay, all right, it's on page 604, and it's right here, kind of 3/4 of the way down the page, car occupant, and it's V49.9. And that sounds like a good code, but as always, I'm going to tell you, you need to go look it up. So we are going to flip to V49.9. Again, this is when those tabs are going to come in handy, so I hope everyone's tabbed. All right. Okay, so we're looking for V49.9. And it's here on page 1485. Here, right here at the bottom. Okay. V49.9, car occupant, driver, passenger, injured in an unspecified traffic accident. That seems to fit in really well. However, I do see that there is a red stop sign and an X here. So we cannot just use this code, right? So we need to use a space holder. We already know from that X, a placeholder, sorry, not a space holder. We're going to need at least one placeholder, and we can't just use this code as is. So let's go to the top of the category here, V49, car occupant injured in other and unspecified transport accidents. And this one says the appropriate 7th character. So we need to have 7 characters, and needs to be added to each code from the category. So it's A is initial category or initial encounter, D is subsequent, and S is sequela. Since this was an observation immediately following an accident, A is going to be the most appropriate seventh character to use. So V49.9, that's only 1, 2, 3, 4. So we are going to need to use 2 placeholders in this situation. V49.9, and then make sure I do my math right here. XXA, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yes, okay. Guys, I'm not a math person, all right? Counting is hard, even if it's just up to 7. V49.9XXA, that is going to be the code that I'm going to use there. And I'm going to double check in the answer sheets that this is correct before I post this. So if this is not correct, you won't ever see this video. But 99217 is going to be our CPT code. Our observation following an accident is going to be Z04.1. And then our external cause, car accident or accident transport car occupant, is going to be V49.9XXA. All right, so that's definitely a tricky one. I think the CPT code was probably a pretty straightforward one, so hopefully you were able to get that. But if you had any trouble with this external cause one, that's, you know, a really difficult clue to get. Basically the only clue you got was that there was a car accident, and they said that you needed 2 different codes for ICD-10. So hopefully, though, you were able to at least identify that you should not have coded that subdural hematoma because it was ruled out. So if you were able to get that, awesome job. That was definitely the big hint that they wanted you to get with that question. So I'm going to double check the answers, make sure these are exactly right, and then I will post this for you. Thanks, guys.